All right, Randy, nice to meet you. Nice to have you on Bible BDB, the first interview we're going to do. The reason I wanted to interview you was I got very excited when I saw online that you have this new reader's edition coming out with the KJV Store. And I think there's a lot of buzz about it I see in the Facebook Bible community and the Bible groups. So I just wanted to connect with you and kind of have you walk us through what it's all about, because I do feel that sometimes you see posts flying by on social media and everyone's so busy and they don't always fully grasp. So from Bible reviewing to Bible designing. So I think that's one of the things we've been talking about in the Bible community is like, okay, Randy was a Bible reviewer and now he's transitioned to design. Like, what was the transitional process? Or what made you think I want to actually get into designing Bibles from reviewing Bibles?
I have a tendency to want to make my own of anything I'm into, whether it be guitars or anything, whatever I'm into. I have a tendency to want to make mine. I want my own, and Bibles is no different. So
Mhm.
when I started looking at Bibles back in the '80s, I was looking at the Bibles people would carry, and I was looking at Bibles in bookstores, and we had KJV the most, but as you know, verse by verse, double column. It looks like a dictionary. But I would see these other Bibles that in the bookstores, and they were pretty. They had poetry that looked like poetry. They had lists that looked like lists, and they had paragraphs that looked like it was meant to be read. And I wanted that in a KJV. But since then, there have been a few. You've got the Clarion, which looks really nice. So you've got the New Cambridge Paragraph Bible. Actually, you have the Cambridge Paragraph Bible from the 1800s. I mean,
Oh,
it goes back for a while, but
oh.
they didn't add the poetry until recent. The second edition of the Pitt Minion is a double column paragraph with poetry, but they don't carry the poetry into the New Testament. And then eventually, of course, the Traveris, and there's been a few others, uh, two or three more. The None Such 3-volume edition that was reprinted by local church Bible publishers. They republished the None Such 3-volume edition in a single volume. And then Holman had a KJV Reader's Edition. And I wanted something that looked more complete, that they didn't finish out the poetry for the New Testament. Some did, had a little, but not enough. The New Cambridge Paragraph Bible stopped poetry in the book of Luke. Well, there's more poetry in the New Testament than that. So I just wanted to finish that out. The Traveris is really nice, really pretty, but doesn't follow that same train of thought. It has poetry for Old Testament quotes, which looks great, but it's not what I was looking for. So I saw an opportunity to pitch an idea. I've had these ideas for a while, been brewing in my mind for several years. And so I had the opportunity to pitch this idea to Lynn Williams from the KJV Store during an interview that I did with him. And he liked the idea, and the rest is history.
Okay, so that is tying into what I wanted to ask you about, which was like, why KJV? Because we have all these discussions in the Bible community. Is KJV still relevant to modern readers? But my first question would be like, why did you decide for your very first attempt at this to go with the King James Version?
Because the other translations, all the other translations have pretty layouts. They have pretty text that can draw you in to make you want to read it. A lot of them have reader's editions. Even if they don't have a reader's editions, a lot of them are pretty on the page. You can look at the ESV Legacy, or now it's called the Gloria Dei, or you can look at the Heritage, which is now called the Veritas. They're pretty, and they're not even meant to be reader's editions, but they look great. Lots of white space, lots of everything on the page looks elegant. So, and that carries on to CSB, the NIV, even the New King James. They have pretty layouts, but the King James was lacking. There's just not much there. You can count them on one hand, maybe two hands. If you're lucky, you might be able to count them on two hands, but that you're not gonna need your toes. So I felt like the KJV needed something.
And I think for KJV, a lot of times it tends to be double column, sometimes with the center column references. So I don't think we get a lot of really great single columns. So that's kind of a niche kind of gap in the market a little bit.
Right. And an example with that one, I picked on Thomas Nelson for a while. They they produced a really pretty, really nice New King James double column paragraph. Looks great. It's a large print, thin line. I loved it. And I told them I wanted that in a King James. And I poked and prodded until they finally released it. They finally produced it in King James. And it does have that poetry all the way through. But like you say, it is still double column.
Yeah, there's something about the Psalms and the poetry for me that I think in that single column format. So, but back to the KJV itself, there's a question that we have like, is it still readable? Is it still usable? Can you comment on that specific topic, like for modern people using KJV? Is it still usable, readable, accessible?
I think it's still usable and readable, not necessarily accessible. Uh, I feel like we need uh, Bibles with glossaries, especially if you can put the glossary on the page like Thomas Nelson does with their reference editions. I think that's really the ideal. But at the very least, have a glossary with you. The Trinitarian Bible Society has a booklet with an excellent glossary and a reader's reading plan in that. And I think that helps. But the problem is you don't always know that you don't know what something means because things have changed meaning. And both meanings can fit the context, but we can misunderstand and misinterpret. So it does help to have helps, but it also helps to read other translations that can stand out to you. For example, if you read the New King James along with the King James, the New King James can tell you what you're missing in the King James or misunderstanding or misinterpreting. I do feel like it's a good thing to read the King James, just like it's a good thing to read Shakespeare. I don't think we should throw Shakespeare away. There have been 400 years of tools, of references, of materials, of devotionals, of things that we have access to that we can pick up and read and study, and sermons we can listen to or read at least. So I feel like we should use the King James. I feel like we're losing our ability to memorize words. You know, we have fewer and fewer words that we use on a daily basis. If you look at books written 100 years ago, they feel a lot more complex than books today. And that's not always a bad thing, but at the same time that, you know, that we've lost some complexity, but at the same time, the older words can be more precise. Now we might use one word that means 5 different things, like the word cool. But if you wanted to say that something was a cooler temperature, I would say cool, but you might think I'm talking about, oh, that's neat. You know, it's not necessarily always hard to understand, especially in context. But I feel like if we read the King James, then we can elevate our reading abilities a little bit more.
Yeah, that's probably the reason I wanted to talk to you. I'm actually quite passionate about King James. I don't think it's the only translation that you need to use. I don't think it's necessarily even the best one for modern readers. I know we have, maybe non-native English speakers. We may have young people. We may have new believers. So I definitely love the wealth of translations available to us. But like you, I have a lot of love and respect for the historic tradition. I think there's just some beautiful, when I think about the KJV, I always think about the historical weight of it in terms of the early church fathers, in terms of some of the greats, the giants of the faith, great evangelists like Billy Graham, people like Tozer and Spurgeon, all these great hymns that we have. I love the old hymns sometimes. So I think I agree. In my humble opinion, I do think that KJV still has a place within modern Bible reading. It is a stretch, it is a challenge, but in some ways I do find it quite rewarding. And as we talk about in the Bible community, I do think that there are a lot of resources that are available now at the touch of a finger, like on your phone. You can just press a button, and it does require maybe a higher barrier to entry, but I definitely think the beauty of it, to me, I still feel like it's worth it to put in the work and, read the King James if you can, if you're so inclined.
Well said. Pretend I said that.
Okay, so that was why KJV. I do feel like I got a sense of there's a passion, like a burning passion. I know Len has it from the KJV store. I know that Klaus has it, but I feel like every single person that's involved in this project, there's a passion about it. So I wanted to what did you feel, or what do you feel most passionate about related to this KJV readers?
First is the fact that the KJV is being presented in a way that's highly readable. I think that's part of the issues with the KJV is that it's diced up into individual verses, and it's one of the things that lets people take things out of context. And by placing it in paragraphs, you get to see that context. Also, you get to understand that this is poetry, or this is a parable, or this is a letter one person wrote to another, or this is a dream, or this is a vision. You get to understand that not everything is the same. And when you approach the scriptures, you can know that you have a different way of thinking about each thing, each type of text. So my passion there is to be able to read it that way, to read it and know what is poetry and what is not, to know what is a parable and what is not, just at a glance on the page. You can quickly see this is a prayer.
So can you tell me a little bit more about, is there anything that kind of came to mind, having had looked at so many Bibles through Bible reviews, that you said, I know we said in your interview with Frisch, from the Frisch perspective, you were saying that some things you could have gotten, some things you didn't get, but what things were like must-haves for you? Like this had to be part of this Bible design.
Poetry, of course, the top of the list, and the basics: poetry, lists, letters, a letter that one person wrote to another. And then the nice to haves were going to be things like dreams, parables, that sort of thing. I wanted to add sermons. There's not a lot of sermons. I think it could be helpful, but at the same time, you can't mark everything. If everything is marked, nothing is marked.
Yeah, then it could get a little overwhelming.
Yeah. So for me, the basics, the poetry, the letters, the list, those were the have tos.
Okay.
And then everything else was just some little extras that to me stood out.
What was it like working with the KJV Store?
Lynn is great. I could pitch him an idea. He would think about it and then come back to me with, that's amazing, let's do that. Or I like that, but I like this better. Or I don't like that at all, we're not going to do that. But he was always kind. He was always professional. But I mean, he would answer my questions, or he would pitch me an idea and say, what do you think about this? And I never felt pressured that since he's the one paying the money, he's paying me, he's paying for the publishing, he's paying for the whole thing, it's coming out of his pocket. I never felt pressured that I have to agree with him. I never felt pressured that just because you want this, I have to do it. It was a team effort, and everyone on the team had input. Everyone on the team, we all made compromises, because I couldn't have sermons because, there's too many things. But it, and the same would go with working with Klaus, because I know you're going to ask me that next.
Yes.
Klaus was a great leader, because I could pitch an idea and he would say yes or no, that's a good idea based on experience, rather than I don't like that idea. He could say that's a good idea or that's not a good idea. And if he didn't like the idea, he would tell me why, not just no. Not just you can't do that or you shouldn't do that. He would tell me why. And that would give me a little bit of guidance and leadership, like a good leader, where I could focus that attention into what would be a good idea, or how do we improve this idea? Something might have been a good idea, but we can make it better. How can we make it better? And also, a lot of these things were his ideas, like the end of books coming to a sharp point, come down to a point like a bookmark. He threw in a lot of ideas too. It's not just all my ideas. Lynn had some ideas. Klaus had some ideas. And when Klaus pitched his ideas, it wasn't you have to do these, or, I'm going to hate it if you don't. It was, you have your choice. You can choose this or not. Klaus presented us with several different options. I forgot how many. It's been a while. It's been a few years now. It's been a couple of years. We met up in Nashville, and he had printed sheets for, I think 3 different ideas, if I remember correctly. And each of the ideas included all of the points, the poetry, the list. And from those, we could pick and choose the font we liked, the size of font, the font style. We could choose the features from each that we liked, and we can say, yeah, we want this from this one, we want that from that one, or we don't want this one at all from any of them. and then we can just pick and choose. And he would just go down the list and make notes, and you're getting this, you're getting this, you're getting this, and then all that came together to be our final design.
So I noticed when you brought up the font, what do you feel about the font choice? Was there any specific thought that you went into it? I know it's 11 point, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Right. So that's good. That's a nice large
Yeah.
size. I think that 11 point is a good one that everyone can be very accessible. Is it a unique font for this specific readers?
No, there have been a few other editions that use this font. Not necessarily Bibles. I believe there may have been one other Bible that used it, but I don't know for sure.
Okay.
But it is a common font that you can purchase to use or license. You can purchase to license it to use. But when we saw that one, Lynn and I both immediately went to that font. This is our font.
Right.
And it's one of those things you just know. We just knew. We knew immediately that's the font we want.
So tell us about Royal Youngblood. I know that they're very well, I hope I pronounced that right. I know that they're very well established in the Bible community, and they do, I believe, Bibles, do they print and bind for Allen and Schuyler and some of those other companies. So tell me about that choice, is working with them for printing and binding.
Okay, Lynn asked me when he decided he wanted to go with this project. He asked me, "Who do you want? Name your dream team." And I named Klaus. I named Royal Youngblood. Now they're just Youngblood. They've been bought by a company that's younger than 100 years old. So now they have to be 100 years old or older to be Royal. Now they're just Youngblood.
Okay.
But I had experience with them before. I had talked to them in meetings before that. I actually met with them in Nashville. There was another book show, a Bible book show. So I've met with them several times, actually. I didn't always record it. I didn't always, write about it, but I would meet them. They're very tall. I came to their navel, just about.
Wow.
They're very tall. I came to their shoulders. Maybe not even that far, but either way, that stood out to me. But either way,
interesting.
So
It's the Netherlands, right?
Yes, they're from the Netherlands.
Yeah, yeah.
So
My mom actually had some people came down from the Dutch embassy to visit, and we hosted them at our home, and they were all very tall. So
I met one of the short ones, and he was tall, crazy. But I already had a relationship with them. But even more than that, their printings always stood out to me. Now I've heard some people say that they didn't like some of their printings, but I've not had a bad experience. Everything that I've gotten from them has been amazing. All of my favorite Bibles, I can go back to look at each one of them. Every one of them is either typeset by 2K Denmark or printed by Youngblood or both. So, both companies stood out to me because of that. At the same time, Lynn already had a relationship with Youngblood because he was getting some of the older editions, like the Schofield Classic Study Bible. He was getting some of those printed in a higher quality edition. And for that, he went to Royal Youngblood. And so he was already connected with them anyway. So that wasn't difficult. It was already done. So all I had to do is say, let's go with that. And, he was already on board because he already had experience with them. He already liked their quality also. So.
But they were part of your dream team. Like if you could have dreamed who you wanted to work with. Okay.
Yep.
That's really cool. So let's say we talked about font. What is sacred syntax? That's something that people have asked on social media. I've seen quite a few questions trying to clarify that.
Okay, all of the designs that we did for setting things apart, setting dreams apart, setting parables apart, visions, all of these things are set differently on the page. And it's all very meticulously measured, and it's done like, it'll be 5 millimeters from this side or 3 millimeters from that side. And everything is done just a certain way. All of that combined together is the design style that we used, and Lynn needed to trademark that. So we came up with the name Sacred Syntax to describe that style.
Okay. So this is another question I've seen on social media. People talk about reader's editions. I think the most popular premium reader edition right now is the KJV Traveris from Schuyler. So I wanted to ask, I know you do a lot of comparisons on your blog, but what do you think would be the differences or contrasts, or what's unique about this KJV Store readers?
First of all, it is very similar.
Okay.
But we, with the sacred syntax, have set apart more things. So
Right.
you're going to see some things set apart differently. But also, poetry is going to go all the way through the New Testament, all the way through the Book of Revelation. Everywhere you see poetry in the New Testament, we're gonna show that. Where the Traveris is going to be thinner, because they have more words on the page, because they didn't have to set apart some things. They don't have long list of a single word and things like that in some instances. So they were able to consolidate a little bit more on the page. Another thing, you're going to see a difference in the poetry style. The poetry style that they're using doesn't set apart individual lines of poetry. So when you're reading poetry in the Traveris, you'll a lot of times see one word at the end that actually goes with the next line, sometimes two or three words that go with the next line. So they're using as much of the space that as they can. Ours, we didn't use all the space. We used more white space. So we have a lot of empty space, or negative space, depending on how you want to call it. But we have a lot of empty space on the page. So because of that, it's going to be a thicker Bible. Also, we went with 32 GSM paper, which was my choice to begin with. And Lynn was able to make that work. We were worried there for a little while. Right into the last minute, we were worried that we're going to have to go down to 28 GSM, which I still
Right.
like.
Okay.
I like the French milled Indopake. It's good paper, especially if you get the titanium pigment and all the coatings and all the things. It's really good quality paper. But I like the 32 GSM that I first saw in the long primer, or long primer. I'm not sure how you say that.
I say long primer.
Okay, I do too. That's right then. That has to be the right way.
Has to be the right way.
So in the long primer, because Shari said so.
Yeah.
Um, my first one, it was the Highland goat skin in brown. That one had 32 GSM paper, and that paper has always stood out to me. And so, I wanted that. But so the paper is going to be a little bit different. The overall size of the footprint is similar. Where they have verse numbers in the outer margins, ours is in the inner margin.
Oh, yes, I did see that.
And then we have a glossary, which they did not, which I picked on Sky for not having a glossary, and he let me pick on him. So I appreciate that. But yeah, there's going to be some similarities. We followed the same design style of the typical KJV has capital letters at the beginning of every verse. And so what they did is they removed the verse numbers, but then put the verses together in paragraphs, but still kept the capital letters. We did the same. I didn't want to make too many changes to the KJV. In fact, we didn't make any changes to the text itself. I just wasn't interested in that. I do like the look of the lowercase letters. Cambridge does it well. I've even seen Tyndale do this with a large print thin line. So I do like that. I do prefer that. Now the Tyndale is still a verse by verse, but I do prefer the lowercase letters. But at the same time, I didn't want to make this a 4-year project. So, and then give Peachtree even more trouble with all of the work that they had to do for proofreading, because you can't rush, you can't get it out quick. The faster you go, the more you rush, the more mistakes you're going to make. We've all seen enough Bibles with print errors, and I wasn't interested in adding more print errors. So we didn't make any changes to the text. So, but one difference that we did make, there's a little bit extra space between each verse, so you can tell at a glance where the verse starts.
I
But by
think I
making
saw that you did do it with the verse numbers, and you think you were a little bit more precise, because one of the criticisms I do hear about readers is that people sometimes feel like they get lost, like they can't find, like, let's say, for example, you want to take this reader's Bible to church. Would someone be able to take it to church and use it with the sermon is going on, look up verses?
I feel like this one will be easy to use
Okay.
because of the verse number in the margin. You just go down the margin just like you would a verse by verse. You're looking for the verse number is what you're looking for. You're not looking for the text. You're looking for the verse number. So you go down the inner margin, find the verse number, and then you just look across the page for the blank space. That's where the verse starts. Then when you get to the end of that verse, you're going to see another blank space. So it's easy to know where verses start and end.
And I think you also, did you include, is it called section headings
Mhm.
or That's something I think you don't always see in readers as well, right?
Right. And originally, my original plan was to not have them, but I wanted to have space because I wanted to break the page up. I didn't want it to look like what I call a sea of text. You just,
Yes,
you look at a page and it's nothing but text. I get lost in that.
me too.
I look up and look down and I have no idea where I was.
Right.
So if you break it up a little bit, to my little ADHD mind, you can break pieces apart and it's easier to comprehend. It's easier to find your place and to keep your place. And as a reader's edition, I didn't plan to have anything to break the paragraphs apart other than space. But then when I saw Klaus's design with the large headings in black and then the smaller like subheadings in red, so you have a large print for the the main headings, and then a little bit of a smaller print for the subheadings in red. When I once I saw that on the page, I was sold. And the reason is my personal experience in using a reader's edition or any Bible. My personal experience in using any Bible is I ignore the section headings as I'm reading.
Right.
I don't even look at them. I look at them if I'm trying to find something quick. And usually
Right.
that's behind the pulpit. I'm looking for, I'm going to add a verse and where's it at? I know it's right in here somewhere. Here's a section heading that kind of gets me in the idea of the ballpark where it's at. I can find it easier. Or if I'm trying to describe a text, the section heading will give you an idea of what it's about. So I went ahead and put them in because it does break the page up the same either way. It actually looks less awkward than if it was just blank space. I also have an edition with blank space, and once I saw it, I was like, this kind of just looks odd. It looks like something's missing, but the section heading is ignorable, but not missing.
Yeah, I think that's something that you pointed out to me early on, in our friendship, if I could say. And you pointed out the white space. And I think that's something that people are not sensitive to. But I think that as a Bible reviewer, as you said, that whole wall of text, sometimes it can just be a little bit really hard to navigate. So I think you've raised that point. I've seen you raise that point about, I think we were talking about the Concord and the Cameo, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just that thoughtfulness. And if you look at it, it's something that I don't think is necessarily top of mind. But then there's a difference in actually reading through the page. And as you said, you don't necessarily want big gaps, but just some spacing. So even I think the look in terms of elegance, I do have a sense looking at the Bible that you were both really aiming for an elegant look. Mm-hmm. So and just in general with creating this, how did you feel about the feeling of finding the right balance with things on the page?
That's what Klaus was for.
Okay. Yes.
That's the advantage of having someone who knows what they're doing.
Right.
I design websites. I know what a good website design should look like, how it should lead your eye, how it should present itself on the screen. But I don't design paper. I don't design page layouts. Mm-hmm. So I know it when I see it. I can look at a good design and say, that's a good design, or that's not a good design. I don't always know why. I can look at it and say something is wrong here, but I can't put my finger on what it is. Well, Klaus will tell you exactly what it is.
Right.
I've shown Klaus Bibles, and Lynn also brought some Bibles and showed to Klaus and said, what do you think about this? And Klaus just go down the list and say, well, this is great. I don't really care for that. That's great. And he's pointing out things that I never even saw. And I've done this for a while and I never even noticed some of these things. So, but once you have someone like Klaus who can make those minute adjustments and tweaks and get everything on the page just right, he was able to approach that design that way. And that's actually one of the advantages in having Klaus, because they're not just typesetters, they're page designers.
Right.
So I'm careful at calling myself the designer. I created the concept. I was the concept designer, concept creator, and I was the general editor. Everything that they did, they gave to me, I would approve it or not. I'm the one who said yes or no. But they're the ones who put it on the page. And so everything that happened on the page was because I said it goes there, but they're the ones who put it there and made it work and made whatever adjustments that needed to be made or whatever. Plus, if I said, let's do this, they would say, no, that's a dumb idea. And here's why. So that helped a lot. One thing I wanted to mention too about readers editions, I've used a lot of readers editions over the years, and I find sometimes they're not usable they're not useful for other things. They're not usable. You can use them for reading, but sometimes you can't use them with a reading plan because you don't know where you are.
Yeah.
You pick up the page and where am I in this? I have no idea, but I need to follow this reading plan and it tells me what verse I need to read next. I don't know. I can't figure out where I am. So that's another thing I wanted to make sure that I had verse numbers, make sure that I had chapter numbers. It does look great to not have them. That's beautiful on the page, but all you can do is read. It's hard to follow along with someone else. It's hard to study, and it's hard to use a reading plan. So that's the three things that I wanted to make sure that we could do with this.
And one of the things you mentioned, Randy, is did you put a reading plan in the back of the Bible?
Yes, we use the Trinitarian Bible Society booklet that has the reading plan, which is a machine plan, and has the glossary. Both of those are in the back. And we did get their permission to use it. That's one thing I like about permissions and things like that. If you can get permission, it's great. So they allowed us to use it free of charge. And so it's in the back.
I also want to comment on the fact that I like that it's a 2-year plan. I do think that sometimes with KJV, it helps to slow down. I've noticed people say in the Bible community that sometimes they find they can't go as fast with KJV. And you don't always, to me, have to necessarily rush. I think people have commented that KJV is a nice translation for slowing down, meditating on scripture, meditating on God's word, chewing on the verses, researching. So I think the 2-year plan will give people a little bit more breathing room, a little bit more flexibility. They feel like they can take their time. So we wanted to talk about maps. I know we'd mentioned it. Interestingly enough, maps is not something I feel like I necessarily have a connection to yet. I was like, oh, there's a lot of stuff in the back material. But I wanted to ask you, like, how could someone use a Bible map in their Bible reading and Bible study? And then tell me about the map specifically in the Reader's Edition as well, please.
Okay, well, I've gone on record saying that I love maps and I use them.
Okay, that's good.
I'll be teaching and I'll say, okay, I'll turn to your maps. This is why I like to have maps in my Bible. Let's all turn to your maps. And the reason I do this is because we don't know how far it is from Ephesus to Galilee. And if you walk that, is that a lot? How far is that? What did they have to go through? Did they walk over mountains? Was it all beach? What happens? How do I relate to this? So if you know your location, like where I am, I have Athens and I have Cleveland this way. I have Athens and I have Cleveland below it. And I have in Knoxville above that and Chattanooga below that. If I have an idea of that distance and then I look on a map that Jesus walked from this location to this location, then it's the equivalence of him walking from Athens to Cleveland. And I have an idea, I'm talking about Tennessee, anybody that's not sure what I'm talking about here. You have an idea of the location that he had to walk, of where he had to walk to. That's easier to comprehend. So when you're reading the Bible and you see that Jesus went from here to here, look in your maps and see what that means in real life, and equate it to something that makes sense to you. And then you have an idea of the kinds of things that they had to put up with and focus on and deal with when they're walking from this place to this place, because some of these are pretty decent distances, but at the same time, some ministries didn't go beyond 20 miles, but then some were 200 miles. So they're walking or they're taking a boat or whatever it is that they're doing. But to me, that helps. It might not be the same for everyone. It might not help, some people, but to me, it helps. I can visualize it. I can see it. I can experience it now. Not really, but I can experience something similar. And that similarity helps me comprehend what they did. Now, I've also gone on record, and I have to back up on this one. I've gone on record saying that maps have to have an index.
Okay.
I'm wrong.
All right.
I am wrong. Ideally, maps do have an index. However, when you look at the older maps, there are filled up with so many things on that page that you can't see anything. You can open up what you know is Israel. You know where things are and can't find them because there's so much on the page. They put so much information as far as topography. They draw in all of the trees and all the dirt and all the things. It's just too much. For those maps, they've gotten better over time. They've gotten cleaner. Take a look at the old 100-year-old maps. they're dense. Over the years, they've gotten cleaner. Take a look at Cambridge. In the past couple of decades, Cambridge has gone from one style of maps to the other. The drawing style is the same, but they've gone from one type of map to the other, and they've made some adjustments, and things are a little bit easier to find. But there's still so much on there. You need an index to find it. Also, the more maps you have, the harder it is to find the things. Now, what we have done is we are using maps designed by 2K Denmark. And when they told me they had these maps, my first train of thought is I have to have an index, or it's no, it's no go. I've got to have my index. They showed me the maps and I'm like, I don't need an index for this, because they're pretty to look at. Maps need to be pretty to look at, but they also need to be comprehensible. I need to be able to understand what I'm seeing. So I'm looking at these maps and I'm seeing the places, and it's large text, and it's easy to find what I'm looking at and what I'm looking for. And they're not so dense that it's hard to understand. At the same time, you don't have all the details. You're not going to have every single stream, and you're not going to have all the little walking trails and all the, all the things, but it focuses on what you need. This is where the main locations are. So when I saw that, I had to have them, even without the index. I started using them and didn't need an index. So it depends on the design of the maps. Nowadays, when I'm looking at some of these maps, I'm not looking at it with the idea of, does it have an index or I can't use them? I'm looking at how easy is it to use these without an index. And the better quality maps, the simpler maps, I'll say it that way, the less that's on there, the less you need the index. So what we've done, what 2K Denmark has done, is they've given us maps that have what we need. And they look good. I like them. I can't wait for you to see them.
I did have a question about the paper in the KJV Store edition. I know we talked about that a little bit, but related to 32 GSM, I think I've seen it said that it's kind of a sweet spot, because I know we have the 28 GSM, which is super portable. And then when we get to 36 and 40, it can get heavy. So what was your thought process with the paper that you guys selected for this edition?
I did feel like it was the sweet spot. It's that place where it is thin, but not too thin. And we can get our Bible too thick. And that's why we were having trouble, because of our word count. We were afraid we were going to have to go down to even thinner. So, but we were able to get 32 GSM. But that is a good sweet spot, because you have that thickness that it's easy to grab and turn. Some people feel like the thinner paper is too easy to tear. I've personally never torn paper, but I can see that being a problem for some. Also, the opacity, the thicker your paper, the more opaque it is if it's in a certain category of quality. You can get thick paper that's a cheap paper. You can get thin paper that's a high quality paper. You can get thin paper with better opacity than thick paper. But if you're talking about good quality paper all the way through, then you're going to get, the thicker is going to have a better opacity. And I felt like the 32 GSM gave us that level of opacity that we wanted, that easy to turn thickness, and just that elegant feel that we wanted. And you can mark it. I feel like the 32 is a better choice for highlighting and marking, but now that's me saying it without the experience of marking in 28 GSM myself. But I think, whatever you can get is all good either way. But I do feel like the 32 GSM is a good sweet spot.
Yeah, I think a lot of people would agree with you and sort of share that based on the comments I've seen. So we're getting into the holidays, and I think this Bible is coming out. Is it the first week in December?
Yes, that's the goal.
That's the
First week
goal.
in December.
Very nice. Okay, so that's actually all the questions that I had. Is there anything else that you wanted to cover or anything?
Well, the KJV Store Reader's Edition is available for pre-order for $199. I'm not sure how long the pre-order price will be what it is. I didn't ask Lynn. I should have asked Lynn, but pre-order.
Yes. So basically, the reason we wanted to talk to Randy was we were very excited about the KJV Store readers. As we discussed earlier in the video, they're not always that many readers editions. So, and also this is someone from the Bible community, someone who has reviewed many, many Bibles. So there's a deep thought as Randy also talked to us about collaborating with the KJV Store, collaborating with 2K Denmark, collaborating with Royal Youngblood. So this is like a team effort, and almost everyone involved is someone who is very deeply involved in Bible reviewing, Bible production, and I think that there's a lot of mindfulness and thought that has gone into this. You can see it. So if you go to the KJV Store website, as Randy says, you can pre-order it. There is a lot of information on the website that you can see about all the fine details about this Bible. So you can kind of go on there, take a look. As Randy says, pre-order. They're aiming for a release in December. And Randy, we look forward to seeing it. I look forward to seeing it.
I can't wait for you to see it.